Jack Harrison works 3 jobs just to keep food on the table for his kids in rural Montana. On a quiet morning in the Bitterroot Mountains, he hears a child's scream pierce through the trees. Without hesitation, he runs toward the sound and finds a young boy cornered by a massive grizzly bear. Armed with nothing but a pocket knife, Jack puts his life on the line to save the child. Minutes later, a sleek private jet lands in a nearby clearing. Out steps a stunning woman in designer clothes, the boy's mother, who's about to make Jack an offer that could change everything. But there's more to her story than meets the eye, and Jack's simple life is about to get complicated. What secret is this wealthy mother hiding that could turn both their worlds upside down? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The stack of overdue bills on Jack Harrison's kitchen counter had grown tall enough to cast a shadow across his morning coffee. He thumbed through them in the pre-dawn darkness, the red final notice stamps becoming all too familiar. Outside, Montana's autumn wind rattled the windows of their modest ranch house, a reminder of the coming winter and the heating costs that would come with it. "Dad," Emma's voice, still thick with sleep, made him quickly shuffle the bills into a drawer. His 13-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, her younger brother Tyler's teddy bear clutched in her hand. Tyler had another nightmare about Mom. Jack's throat tightened. 2 years had passed since Sarah's accident, but the empty space she left seemed to grow larger every day. "I'll check on him," he said, rising from the kitchen table. His joints creaked, a souvenir from yesterday's double shift at the lumber mill. In Tyler's room, his 8-year-old son had burrowed deep under his dinosaur print comforter. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, his calloused hand finding Tyler's shoulder through the blankets. "Hey, buddy, want to talk about it?" Tyler emerged. Slowly, his brown eyes, Sarah's eyes, wet with tears. "I couldn't remember what her voice sounded like," he whispered. Jack pulled his son close, breathing in the scent of children's shampoo and sleep-warm skin. "Your mom," he said carefully, "had a laugh like summer rain, gentle but strong enough to fill up every corner of a room." He felt Tyler relax slightly, against him. "And when she sang you to sleep, even the birds would stop to listen." Emma appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. She was trying so hard to be grown up these days, but Jack could see the need in her eyes. He lifted his other arm, and she joined their huddle, all 3 Harrisons holding onto each other in the grey morning light. The moment was broken by Jack's phone alarm. 5:30 a.m., time for his first job of the day. "Okay, troops," he said, mustering cheerfulness. "Operation Breakfast is go. Emma, you're on toast duty. Tyler, you're my official fruit selector." It was their morning routine, turning necessity into a game, because games hurt less than reality. As the kids busied themselves in the kitchen, Jack quickly changed into his work clothes. The mirror showed him what 2 years of being both Mom and Dad had done: new grey at his temples, deeper lines around his eyes. But Sarah had always said his smile was his best feature, so he practiced it now, making sure the kids would see strength when they looked at him. Breakfast was a military operation of efficiency. Sandwiches packed, permission slips signed, homework checked. Jack dropped Tyler at before-school care at 6:15, then Emma at the middle school by 6:45, just in time to make it to the lumber mill for his 7 a.m. shift. The mill air was thick with sawdust and the whine of machinery. Jack pulled on his safety gear, nodding to co-workers who'd become something like family over the past decade. Mike, his supervisor, caught his eye and walked over. "Harrison," Mike said, his voice gruff with concern, "you're looking beat. Still working those evening shifts at the hardware store?" "And weekends at the moving company," Jack admitted, adjusting his hard hat. "It's fine, Mike. I'm fine." Mike's weathered face creased with worry. "You can't pour from an empty cup. Son, Sarah wouldn't want—" "I've got this," Jack cut him off, perhaps too sharply. He softened his tone. "Really, Mike, the kids need new winter coats, and Tyler's growing out of his boots again. I'm handling it." The day passed in a blur of physical labor, each log he processed representing another small deposit in the kid's future. By late afternoon, his back ached and his hands were raw, but there was no time to rest. The hardware store needed him from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. As he changed out of his mill gear, Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Made dinner for Tyler. Don't worry about us. Love you, Dad." His brilliant, beautiful girl, growing up too fast because she had to. Jack texted back a heart emoji. Emma had taught him how, and headed to his second job, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, but his determination unchanged. Tomorrow would be Saturday at least, and their weekly hiking trip into the Bitterroot Mountains. Just him and his kids, walking the same trails he'd explored with his own father, finding peace in the wilderness where status and bank accounts didn't matter. He didn't know it yet, but tomorrow's hike would change everything. Dawn painted the Montana sky in watercolor strokes of pink and gold as Jack pulled his father's old compass from the kitchen drawer. The brass was worn smooth from decades of use, its weight familiar in his palm. He'd learned to navigate with this same compass when he was Tyler's age, his father's steady voice teaching him to trust the needle's unwavering point north. "Dad, Emma won't get out of the bathroom!" Tyler's complaint echoed down the hallway, followed by the sound of persistent knocking. "5 more minutes," Emma called through the door. "My hair's a disaster." Jack smiled despite his exhaustion. After closing the hardware store last night, he'd spent 2 hours doing repair work on their aging washing machine. But Saturday mornings were sacred, their time to escape into the mountains, where problems seemed smaller against the backdrop of towering pines and endless sky. "Tyler, come check our supplies while Emma finishes up," Jack called, spreading their gear across the kitchen table. His son appeared, already wearing his hiking boots and favorite camouflage jacket. They went through their checklist together. "Water bottles, check. Trail mix, check. I added extra M&Ms. First aid kit, check. And hand sanitizer because Emma says wilderness bathroom breaks are gross." Jack ruffled Tyler's hair, marveling at how his son could still radiate such joy despite everything they'd lost. Sarah would have loved seeing him like this, so eager for adventure. Emma finally emerged, her dark hair neatly braided. "Sorry," she said, but her eyes were bright with excitement. Even his teenage daughter, who usually preferred texting to tree climbing, came alive on these mountain mornings. The drive to their favorite trailhead took 40 minutes, the old truck winding higher into the Bitterroot Range. Jack told stories about his own childhood hikes, the kids adding sound effects to tales of startled deer and angry squirrels. These moments were worth every double shift, every aching muscle. The parking area was empty when they arrived. Just how Jack liked it. "Remember the rules," he said as they shouldered their day packs. "Stay where you can see us," Emma and Tyler recited in unison. "Make noise so we don't surprise any animals," Emma added. "And if we see a bear, we're supposed to look big and scary." Tyler threw his arms up, attempting his fiercest growl. Jack checked the compass, oriented them toward their usual trail, and they set off into the pine-scented morning. The path was familiar but never boring, each visit revealing new treasures, fresh deer tracks, unusual birds, interesting rocks that Tyler collected like precious gems. An hour into their hike, Jack noticed something odd. Candy bar wrappers scattered near the trail. "Pack it in, pack it out," he reminded the kids, stooping to collect the litter. But something about the wrappers bothered him. They were fresh, yet they'd seen no other hikers. Emma spotted the next clue, small footprints in a patch of mud heading off the main trail. Child-sized footprints. "Dad?" Her voice held a note of worry. "Should we tell someone?" Jack studied the tracks, his instincts from a lifetime in these mountains tingling. The prints were recent, the edges still sharp. Somewhere up ahead, a child might be lost in this vast wilderness. "Change of plans," he said, pulling out his phone. "No signal. Typical for this elevation. We're going to follow these tracks, but carefully. Emma, you're in charge of marking our trail. Tyler, stay between your sister and me. They moved cautiously, Jack's eyes scanning for more signs. A broken twig here, a disturbed patch of leaves there. The lost child was moving, deeper into unknown territory, away from the marked trails. Jack checked his compass frequently, making sure they could find their way back. The morning grew warmer, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dusty beams. Jack was about to suggest a water break when they heard it, a sound that made his blood run cold, a deep rumbling growl followed by a child's terrified scream. "Emma," Jack said, his voice dead calm, "take Tyler back down the trail. Go straight to the ranger station." "Dad, no," Emma started, but Jack cut her off. "Now, Emma, this isn't a discussion." He handed her the compass. "Remember what I taught you. Follow the trail markers you made. Do not stop for anything." Tyler's lower lip trembled. "Daddy?" "It's okay, buddy." Jack forced a smile. "This is just like our practice drills. Go with your sister. I'll be right behind you." Another scream pierced the forest, closer now. Jack waited only long enough to see his children start down the trail, Emma practically dragging her brother. Then he turned and ran toward the sound, his hand closing around the pocket knife he always carried, a poor weapon against what waited ahead, but the only one he had. The morning air, so peaceful moments ago, now crackled with tension. Jack moved as quickly as he dared, his heart pounding out a desperate rhythm. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Jack burst through a thicket of mountain laurel into a small clearing and froze. 20 yards ahead, a massive grizzly bear reared on its hind legs, easily 8 feet tall. At its feet, pressed against a granite boulder, a boy no older than Tyler, cowered in a bright blue jacket. Time seemed to crystallize into a single eternal moment, the bear's hot breath clouded in the morning air. The boy's eyes, wide with terror, met Jack's across the clearing. The pocket knife in Jack's hand suddenly felt as useful as a toothpick. "Hey!" Jack's voice boomed through the clearing, deeper and steadier than he felt. He clapped his hands, together creating a sharp crack that echoed off the rocks. "Hey, bear! Over here!" The grizzly dropped to all fours and swung its enormous head toward Jack. Good, the boy wasn't the focus of its attention anymore. Bad. Now Jack had an angry bear looking straight at him. "When I say run," Jack called to the boy, not taking his eyes off the bear. "Run straight behind me. Don't stop. Don't look back." The bear huffed, pawing the ground. Jack knew the signs. It was deciding whether to charge. He had seconds to act. Keeping his movements slow and deliberate, he shrugged off his backpack. "Run!" Jack swung the backpack in a wide arc as the boy darted past him. The bear lunged forward, but Jack's backpack caught it full in the face, exploding in a shower of trail mix and water bottles. The distraction bought them precious seconds. Jack grabbed the boy's arm, and they ran, crashing through underbrush, branches whipping at their faces. Behind them, an enraged roar shook the forest, followed by the sound of massive paws pounding. The earth. "There!" Jack spotted a cluster of thick pines ahead. "Climb!" He boosted the boy toward the lowest branch, hearing the bear crash through the vegetation behind them. The child scrambled up with surprising agility. Jack jumped for the branch just as the bear reached them. Claws raked across his calf, tearing through denim and flesh. White-hot pain exploded in his leg, but adrenaline kept him moving. He pulled himself higher, the pocket knife falling from his grip as he climbed. The bear rose up, claws scoring, deep grooves in the tree trunk. Jack and the boy climbed higher, into thinner branches that wouldn't support the bear's weight. The grizzly's frustration vibrated through the tree as it shook the trunk, trying to dislodge them. "Are you hurt?" Jack asked the boy, who clung to a branch like a terrified koala. The child shook his head, tears cutting clean tracks through the dirt on his face. "I'm Max," he whispered. "I got lost. My mom's going to be so mad." "I'm Jack. And your mom's going to be too happy you're safe to be mad." Jack hoped that was true. He studied their situation. The bear paced below, occasionally standing to test the tree's strength. "Just stay very still. Bears usually give up if they can't reach their target quickly." Max nodded, his small body trembling. "I'm cold." Jack carefully maneuvered closer, letting the boy lean against him for warmth. His torn calf burned, blood soaking his sock, but he kept his voice calm. "Tell me about your mom. Is she waiting at the ranger station?" "No, she—" Max's explanation was cut off by a new sound that seemed completely alien in the wilderness, the distinctive whine of jet engines. The bear's head snapped up at the noise. A sleek shadow passed overhead, and the downdraft from the aircraft rattled the pine needles around them. The grizzly dropped to all fours, clearly deciding this was more excitement than its morning needed, and lumbered away into the forest. "That's my mom!" Max's voice lifted with hope. "She has a plane. She's been looking for me." Jack stared as a private jet, easily worth more than he'd earn in 3 lifetimes, circled back and descended toward something out of their view. The distant sound of its landing carried through the trees. "Think you can climb down?" Jack asked, testing his injured leg. It hurt like hell, but it would hold his weight. Max nodded, and they began their careful descent. By the time they reached the ground, Jack could hear voices calling through the forest. "Here!" he shouted. "We're over here!" Through the trees came a search party, led by a woman whose appearance seemed utterly at odds with their surroundings. Her designer hiking clothes looked fresh off a magazine cover, and her dark hair was perfectly styled, despite the helicopter flight. But her face showed raw, desperate maternal fear that Jack recognized from his own mirror in the days after Sarah's accident. "Max!" She ran forward, dropping to her knees to wrap her arms around her son. "Oh my God, baby, are you okay? I've been searching all night. The security team said you wandered away from the lodge, and then we couldn't find you, and—" She stopped, really looking at Jack for the first time. "You saved him?" Jack shifted his weight off his injured leg, suddenly very aware of his torn, bloodied jeans and dirty flannel shirt. Just happened to be in the right place. The woman stood, keeping one arm around Max. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and the same shade of green as her son's, took in everything. Jack's injury, his worn clothing, the way he carried himself. "I'm Victoria Blackwood," she said, "and I believe I owe you more than I can ever repay." Jack had no way of knowing it then, but those words would change his life forever. Victoria Blackwood's business card appeared in Jack's hand like a magic trick. He hadn't even seen her reach for it. But there it was, heavy cream-colored stock, embossed letters catching the morning light. "CEO, Blackwood Industries," it read, followed by contact information for offices in New York, London, and Tokyo. "The medic needs to look at that leg," Victoria said, gesturing to the EMT who had emerged from the trees with her security team. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Jack glanced back toward the trail where he'd sent his children. "My kids are safe at the ranger station," Victoria interrupted smoothly. "My team radioed ahead. They're being looked after." The EMT cleaned and bandaged Jack's calf, while Max sat nearby, clutching a shock blanket around his shoulders and refusing to let his mother out of arm's reach. Victoria divided her attention between her phone, apparently coordinating something complex involving multiple helicopters and security teams, and shooting concerned glances at her son. "7 stitches, the EMT announced, finishing the bandage. "You should really get to a hospital for proper—" "I'll handle it," Victoria cut in again. She ended her call and fixed Jack with an appraising look. "My personal physician is flying in from Missoula. He'll meet us at the lodge." Jack shifted uncomfortably. "That's not necessary. I can drive to the clinic in town, Mr. Harrison." Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. "You saved my son's life. The least I can do is ensure you receive proper medical care." She paused, something flickering behind her carefully composed expression. "Please, let me do this much." There was a vulnerability in her request that made Jack hesitate. Behind the polished exterior and casual displays of wealth, he recognized something familiar. A parent who'd faced the terror of potentially losing their child. A series of sharp whistles cut through the trees, followed by Emma's voice. "Dad!" "Dad, where are you?" "Here," Jack called back, relief flooding through him. Emma and Tyler burst into the clearing, followed by two rangers and what appeared to be private security personnel. Tyler launched himself at his father, while Emma hung back, taking in the scene with wary teenage assessment. Her eyes moved from the jet visible through the trees to Victoria's expensive clothing to the armed security team. "Are you okay?" Tyler asked, his face pressed against Jack's chest. "Did you fight the bear? Was it huge? Did you use karate?" Jack chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. "No karate, just a lot of climbing." He nodded toward Max. "This is Max, who's also very brave. And this is his mom, Ms. Blackwood. Victoria, please," she corrected, then smiled at Tyler. "Your father is quite the hero." Emma stepped closer to Jack, her posture protective. "Is your leg really hurt? Should we call Dr. Martinez?" Before Jack could respond, Victoria produced another business card, this one different from the first, and held it out to Emma. "I've arranged for your father to be treated at my lodge. Would you and your brother like to come along? We have an excellent chef who makes the most amazing hot chocolate." Emma took the card cautiously, studying it like she expected to find hidden catches in the fine print. Tyler, less suspicious by nature, perked up at the mention of hot chocolate. Jack started to protest, but Victoria raised a hand. "Mr. Harrison, Jack, you're injured. Your children are understandably shaken. My son is desperate for a hot shower, and probably needs to talk about what happened. The lodge is 15 minutes away by helicopter. It's fully staffed, and you'll all be much more comfortable there while we sort things out." The way she said, "sort things out," carried weight beyond the immediate situation. Jack had spent enough time in these mountains to recognize when the weather was about to change. Something in Victoria's tone suggested similar shifts ahead. Max had finally relaxed enough to venture away from his mother's side. He approached Tyler, who was about the same age. "Do you like video games? The lodge has a whole room full of them." Tyler's eyes widened. He looked at Jack pleadingly. Emma, still skeptical, asked, "What about our truck at the trailhead?" "My team will drive it to the lodge," Victoria answered smoothly. She checked her phone as it buzzed. "The doctor just landed." "Shall we?" Jack looked at his children, Tyler excited, Emma protective, then at Max, who still showed signs of his ordeal in the woods. Finally, he met Victoria's gaze and saw something there, not just gratitude, but calculation. This woman was used to getting her way, and she had plans beyond simple thanks. "All right," he agreed, wondering what exactly he was getting his family into. "Lead the way." The legal document sat unopened on the mahogany desk between them. Victoria's private office at the lodge looked like it had been transported straight from a Manhattan skyscraper. All clean lines and subtle power through floor to ceiling. Windows, the Montana wilderness stretched endlessly, somehow made to feel like part of her carefully curated design. "I know this seems unusual," Victoria said, watching Jack's face carefully. 2 hours had passed since their arrival at the lodge. His leg had been properly treated, the children were occupied with video games and hot chocolate, and now came what Jack suspected was the real reason for their invitation. "Unusual doesn't begin to cover it," Jack replied. He was sitting stiffly, in a leather chair that probably cost more than his truck, trying not to think about the designer clothes Victoria's staff had insisted on giving him to replace his torn and bloody ones. "You want to hire me as Max's, what exactly? Personal security advisor?" Victoria leaned forward, her perfect composure showing its first crack, an edge of desperation. "With a focus on wilderness survival and outdoor education. I'm a mill worker with a side job at the hardware store. You're a single father who's successfully raising 2 children while working multiple jobs. You have extensive knowledge of these mountains, and more importantly, you just proved you have the judgment and courage to protect a child in a crisis." She tapped the document. "The salary is generous, full benefits including college funds for your children, a house on the lodge property." Jack's head spun. The numbers she'd mentioned earlier were more than he'd make in 10 years at the mill. Why me? You could hire professional security consultants. Victoria stood and walked to the window. For a moment, she was silhouette against the mountain view, and Jack caught a glimpse of something vulnerable in her stance. Max's father isn't in the picture, she said finally. He's been raised by nannies, security teams, and me, when I can make time between board meetings. This morning was my fault. I promised him a real camping trip, but an acquisition deal came up. I let him down, and he wandered off trying to create his own adventure. She turned back to Jack. When I found them together, your children, they were so natural with him, and the way you handled everything. You didn't treat him like the heir to a fortune or a security risk. You treated him like a kid who needed help. That's all he was at that moment, Jack said quietly. Exactly. Victoria's carefully maintained facade cracked further. Do you know what Max asked me while you were with the doctor? He asked if he could learn to be brave like Tyler. Your son apparently told him all about your camping trips, your hiking adventures, how you taught them to respect the wilderness instead of fear it. Jack thought about the kids in the game room. Max and Tyler already thick as thieves, Emma teaching them both some complicated gaming technique. The easy camaraderie that children could form, unburdened by class distinctions. What exactly would this job entail? He asked. Victoria seemed to relax slightly. Living on the lodge property, teaching Max outdoor skills, supervising his activities, accompanying us on trips, being a male role model. She hesitated. I know it's asking a lot, moving your family, changing schools, but the opportunities for your children would be tremendous, I'm sure. Jack stood, wincing slightly at his injured leg. But my kids have been through enough upheaval. I can't just... A commotion from the hallway interrupted him. The door burst open and Tyler rushed in, followed by Max. Dad! Max's room has a climbing wall, a real one. Can we try it, please? Tyler's eyes were shining with excitement. Max hung back slightly, looking between the adults. I told him we have to ask permission first, he said, directing this mostly to his mother. I remembered the rules. Victoria's face softened. That's very responsible, sweetheart. She glanced at Jack. Perhaps we could continue this discussion later, after you've had time to think. Jack looked at the boys, his son practically vibrating with excitement. Max trying to contain his hope and felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. Yeah, he said finally. I think we need to talk more about this. The family photo sat propped against his coffee mug on the lodge's guest suite balcony. It was worn around the edges, Sarah holding newborn Tyler, Emma grinning with missing front teeth, Jack with his arm around them all. He'd taken it from his wallet earlier, needing their frozen smiles to help him think. What would you tell me to do? He whispered to Sarah's image. The Montana night spread before him, stars impossibly bright against the black sky. 3 days had passed since Victoria's offer, each hour making the decision more complex. A soft knock at the balcony door interrupted his thoughts. Emma stepped out, wrapped in one of the lodge's plush robes. Can't sleep either, she asked, settling into the chair beside him. Her eyes fell on the photo, and she reached out to touch her mother's face. I've been thinking about what Mum would say. Jack turned to his daughter, suddenly struck by how grown-up she looked in the starlight. Oh, and what's your verdict? She'd tell you to stop being so stubborn. Emma's direct gaze was pure Sarah. Mum always said your best quality was how you put us first. But sometimes you put us first so hard you forget we might want to say in things. When did you get so wise? Jack asked softly. Probably around the time I had to start making Tyler's lunches because you were working 3 jobs. There was no accusation in her tone, just stated fact. Dad, I saw the college brochures in Victoria's offer packet. Real colleges, not just community schools. Emma, you could get scholarships. Your grades are good because I study instead of sleep, trying to help with bills by getting academic scholarships. She leaned forward. Tyler needs braces. I heard you and Dr. Martinez talking about it last month. That's why you took the extra shifts at the moving company, isn't it? Jack stared out at the mountains, his throat tight. "You shouldn't have to worry about these things." "But I do. We both do. Tyler pretends he doesn't notice when you skip meals, but he saves half his school lunch for you every day." Emma's voice cracked slightly. "We're not better off struggling just because we're struggling together." A burst of laughter drifted up from somewhere below. They peered over the balcony to see Tyler and Max in the lodge's indoor pool, both boys, splashing while Victoria sat nearby, actually wearing a business suit as she worked on her laptop. "Look at them," Emma said. "Tyler hasn't had a friend like that since everything happened. And Max follows him around like he's some kind of wilderness superhero." "It's not just about money," Jack protested. "This is our home, our life. Our life is wherever we're together." Emma picked up the family photo. "Mom would want us to be happy, Dad, not just surviving." Below, Victoria had set aside her laptop and was being coaxed toward the pool by the boys. She stepped carefully to the edge, still in her designer outfit, and let them splash her. Her laughter floated up, surprisingly unguarded. "She's lonely too," Emma observed. "You can see it when she watches Max with us. Like she's seeing something she wishes he had all the time." Jack studied his daughter's profile. "When did you start noticing so much about people?" "Someone had to, while you were busy noticing all the ways to keep us fed." She stood and kissed his cheek. "Just think about it, okay? Really think about it. Not just the problems, but the possibilities." After Emma went back inside, Jack pulled out the business card Victoria had given him. He'd read it so many times the edges were soft. Victoria Blackwood, CEO. Below that was her private number, which she'd written herself. His phone felt heavy in his hand as he dialed. It rang twice before she answered. "Jack?" She sounded alert despite the late hour. "Is everything all right?" "I have conditions," he said firmly. "Non-negotiable ones." There was a pause, then, "I'm listening. We do this on a trial basis, 3 months. If it's not working for any of us, my kids, Max, any of us, we walk away. No hard feelings." "Agreed. What else?" "I'm not wearing suits. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not." Max learns real wilderness skills, not some sanitized version. "Acceptable. Continue." Jack took a deep breath. "And I need to understand exactly what you're not telling me. Because there's something else behind this offer, isn't there?" The silence stretched so long he thought she might have hung up. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice different than he'd ever heard it, raw, unguarded. "Come to my office tomorrow morning, Jack. There's something you need to see." The designer suit hung in Jack's new closet like a costume from another life. Victoria's personal shopper had called it a necessary evil for board meetings and formal events. Jack called it a straitjacket with Italian labels. "You look like James Bond," Tyler declared from the doorway of their guest house master bedroom. The guest house was larger than their old home, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountain range and modern furnishings that made Jack afraid to sit. "Down! James Bond wishes he looked this uncomfortable," Jack muttered, fighting with the tie. A soft knock announced Emma's arrival. "Here, let me." She stepped in, already dressed for her first day at the private school in her crisp uniform. Her fingers deftly fixed his tie with practiced ease. "Mom taught me how, remember? For my piano recitals." Jack's throat tightened. 1 week had passed since Victoria had shown him the truth, the real reason behind her offer. The memory of that morning in her office still haunted him. "Dad?" Emma's voice pulled him back. "You're doing that thing again, where you go away. In your head. Sorry, kiddo." He forced a smile. "First day jitters, I guess." A sleek town car waited outside, ready to take Emma and Tyler to their new school. Max was already bouncing by the car, eager to show his new friends around campus. Victoria emerged from the main lodge, impeccable in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Jack's old truck. She'd been different since their morning meeting, more guarded, as if revealing her secret had rebuilt some of her walls. "The board meets at 10, she reminded Jack. "Just sit, observe, and try not to worry about the suit. They'll be more interested in your bear fighting skills than your wins or not." Jack nodded, still processing how much his life had changed in a week. From lumber mill to corporate boardroom, from overdue bills to a salary that made his head spin, from desperate single dad to whatever this new role was. The kids piled into the car, their excited chatter a reminder of why he'd agreed to all this. Emma caught his eye through the window and gave him a thumbs up as they pulled away. "They'll be fine," Victoria said, reading his worry. "The school has excellent security and—" "It's not the security I'm worried about," Jack interrupted. "It's everything else. The pressure, the expectations, the money?" Victoria's lips curved slightly. "The class differences? The fact that your children are about to enter a world where their classmates vacation in the south of France and get cars for their sweet 16. Something like that." Victoria's expression softened. "You know why I chose you, Jack? Beyond the obvious reason." She gestured for him to follow her toward the main lodge. "You have something money can't buy, the ability to keep people grounded. Max needs that. Maybe I do too." They entered her office, where the morning sun painted the mountains in shades of gold, the same view that had witnessed her revelation a week ago. "I still think you should tell him," Jack said quietly. Victoria's shoulders stiffened. "He's not ready. I'm not ready." She turned to face him. "That's not what I'm paying you for." "No, you're paying me to teach wilderness survival and be a male role model." Jack met her gaze steadily. "Well, here's today's survival lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous terrain isn't the wilderness. It's the landscape of secrets we create." A flash of something, anger, fear, crossed Victoria's face. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed. The board's gathering. Her CEO mask slipped back into place. "Ready for your debut, Mr. Harrison?" They walked together through the lodge's elaborate hallways. Staff members nodded respectfully, but Jack caught the curious glances, heard the whispered speculations. The rugged outdoorsman in his uncomfortable suit, striding alongside the powerful CEO. He could almost hear the rumors forming. Outside the boardroom, Victoria paused. "Jack." Her voice was low, urgent. "Whatever you learn in there, whatever. You hear, remember our agreement." "I remember." How could he forget? The documents she'd shown him, the truth about Max's father, the real reason she needed someone she could trust. "I'm here to help, Victoria. But sooner or later, secrets have a way of coming out. Usually at the worst possible moment." She touched his arm briefly, a gesture of gratitude or warning. He wasn't sure which. Then she straightened, once again becoming the Victoria Blackwood whose name graced skyscrapers and magazine covers. "After you, Mr. Harrison," she said, opening the boardroom door. "Time to enter the lion's den." The security badge, clipped to Jack's belt, felt like a dead weight as he strode through Blackwood Industries' Montana headquarters. 2 months into his new role, and he still didn't quite believe it when doors unlocked automatically for him, or when executives nodded in his direction. "Mr. Harrison," Janet, Victoria's executive assistant, caught up with him in the corridor. Her usually calm demeanor showed cracks of stress. "Have you seen the morning briefing? Been teaching Max and Tyler wilderness navigation since dawn." Jack checked his watch. "Why? What's—" "He's here." Janet's voice dropped to a whisper. "Richard Wallace, Max's father." Jack's stomach clenched. The secret Victoria had shared that morning in her office, the real reason she needed someone she could trust with Max, suddenly felt heavier than ever. Richard Wallace, the man who'd threatened to take Max away if Victoria ever went public with what she'd discovered about his business dealings. The man whose offshore accounts held money that, if traced, could bring down half the corporate empires in New York. "Does Max know?" Jack asked. "No, but—" Janet glanced around nervously. "Mr. Wallace is demanding to see him. He's in Victoria's office now." Jack was moving before she finished speaking. He'd learned the lodge's layout perfectly in the past months, part of his security training. 3 corridors and 2 secure doors later, he could hear the raised voices. "He's my son. a man's cultured accent sharp with anger. "You can't keep hiding him away in this wilderness compound like some kind of prisoner. Max is exactly where he needs to be." Victoria's voice ice-cold and controlled. "Where he's safe from your influence." Jack's badge beeped as he entered the outer office. Through the glass walls, he could see them. Victoria behind her desk, straight-backed and rigid, facing a man in an expensive suit who radiated dangerous charm. Richard Wallace turned at Jack's entrance, his handsome features twisting in a sneer. "Ah, the famous Mr. Harrison, what do they call you? Wilderness security expert." His perfect smile didn't reach his eyes. "Or is it glorified babysitter?" "I'm the person responsible for Max's safety and well-being," Jack said evenly. "And right now, you're causing a disruption that isn't good for him." "Causing a disruption?" Wallace laughed, but there was nothing warm in it. "I'm his father. I have rights." "Rights you signed away," Victoria cut in, "along with any claim to moral authority when I found out about the trafficking money." Wallace's face darkened. "Accusations without proof, Victoria. We've been through this. One word from my lawyers would bring attention you don't want," she finished. "Works both ways, Richard." Jack positioned himself carefully, noting Wallace's stance, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. His years in the wilderness had taught him to read predators. A commotion in the hallway made them all turn. Max's voice carried through the door. "Mom, Janet said you needed—" Everything happened at once. Wallace moved toward the door. Victoria shouted, "No!" Jack stepped between them, his wilderness-honed reflexes faster than Wallace's city-trained impulses. "Get Max out of here!" Jack called. To Janet, not taking his eyes off Wallace. Behind him, he heard the outer door close, Max's confused questions fading. "You can't keep him from me forever," Wallace snarled, his polished veneer cracking. "Victoria knows what I'm capable of, what my connections can do." "I know exactly what you're capable of." Victoria's voice was deadly quiet. "That's why Max will never be alone with you again." "Mr. Wallace," Jack kept his tone professional but firm, "I'm going to escort you out now, through the side exit, away from where Max might see you. We can do this quietly, or I can call the security team. Your choice." For a moment, Wallace's mask slipped completely, showing something ugly beneath. Then it snapped back into place, and he smoothed his tie with manicured fingers. "This isn't over," he said to Victoria. "The board meets next week. Let's see how they feel about your innovative management style," his eyes flicked to Jack, "and your unusual hiring choices." After Jack had escorted Wallace out, he returned to find Victoria standing at her window, tension visible in every line of her body. "He'll try something," she said without turning. "He always does. We'll be ready." Jack moved to stand beside her. "But Victoria, Max is getting older, smarter. He's going to start asking questions about his father." "I know." She finally looked at him, and for a moment he saw past the CEO armor to the scared mother beneath. "Just help me keep him safe a little longer." "Please?" Jack nodded, but his gut told him their borrowed time was running out. The wilderness might be dangerous, but at least there you could see the threats coming. In this world of corporate intrigue and hidden motives, the predator's war. Susan smiled as they moved in for the kill. The old newspaper clipping trembled in Jack's hands. The headline read, "Blackwood Industries acquires Wallace Global after sudden death of CFO." Below was a photo of Sarah, his Sarah, standing next to Richard Wallace at a charity gala, her smile professionally fixed. "She was our lead accountant," Victoria said softly. They sat in her private study late at night, a storm raging outside the lodge's windows. Sarah found the discrepancies first. The human trafficking money, the offshore accounts, everything. Jack stared at his wife's face in the yellowed newsprint. "She never told me she was investigating Wallace. She just said she was working late. On a big project. She was protecting you and the kids." Victoria pulled another document from her desk. This arrived the day before her accident, her letter to the SEC with all the evidence. She paused. "The accident that happened right after Wallace's personal assistant was seen leaving her office." Thunder cracked outside, but Jack barely heard it. his hands clenched, crumpling the newspaper. "Are you saying I couldn't prove anything? Sarah's computer was wiped clean. The physical evidence disappeared." Victoria's voice was heavy with old guilt. "But I knew. I'd seen the same evidence she had. Wallace knew I knew, but I had nothing concrete. So we made a deal. He gave up. Custody of Max disappeared from our lives, and I kept quiet about what Sarah had discovered. And now he's back." Jack's voice was dangerously quiet. "Because Max is getting older. Because Wallace's new ventures are under investigation. Because—" Victoria stopped as voices approached in the hallway. Emma's laugh mixed with Max's excited chatter as the kids passed by. They'd been watching movies in the lodge's theater room, worlds away from the dark truths being discussed in the study. "Does Max know anything about this?" Jack asked. "He knows his father chose to leave, that's all." Victoria moved to the window, watching the storm illuminate the mountains. "I've tried to protect him from the truth, but secrets have a way of coming out," Jack finished. He looked again at Sarah's photo. "Why didn't you tell me this when you first hired me? Would you have taken the job if you knew? Would you have put your children back in Wallace's orbit?" "No," Jack admitted. He stood, pacing the study. "But we're here now. And Wallace isn't just threatening your world anymore. He's threatening mine. My kids are in this deep now too." Victoria turned from the window, her face shadowed. "I'm sorry, Jack. I never meant—" "To what? To drag us into this? To use my wife's death as leverage?" The words came out harsher than he intended. "To care!" Victoria's composure cracked. "About you, about Emma and Tyler. I didn't expect any of this. Max adores your children, the way you've helped him grow, become more confident." She took a shaky breath. "For the first time in years, he's happy. We both are." Jack's anger deflated. He'd seen the changes too, in Max, in his own kids, in Victoria herself. The walls between their worlds had begun to crumble, revealing something neither of them had expected to find. A soft knock interrupted them. Max stood in the doorway, still in his pajamas. "Mom, the storm's pretty bad. Tyler's kind of scared, but he's pretending not to be. Could we maybe all camp out in the great room, like we did on the survival training weekend?" Victoria glanced at Jack, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly. "Of course, sweetheart," she said. "Go get your sleeping bag. I'll make hot chocolate." After Max left, Jack picked up the newspaper clipping. Wallace won't stop, not with the SEC closing in, not with Max growing up and asking questions. "I know." Victoria's hand brushed his arm. "Jack, if you want to take the kids and leave—" "No." His voice was firm. "Sarah died trying to expose the truth about Wallace. I won't run from this. But no more secrets, Victoria. We face this together, or not at all." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Together." In the distance, they could hear the kids gathering sleeping bags and pillows, their laughter a counterpoint to the storm's fury. Jack tucked the newspaper clipping into his pocket, a reminder of why the truth mattered, why justice had waited long enough. "We should join them," he said, "but tomorrow we start planning. Wallace isn't the only one who knows how to hunt predators." Victoria's answering smile held a fierce edge. "Tomorrow, then. Tonight, we keep them safe." They walked together toward the great room where their children waited. Behind them, lightning illuminated the study where so many secrets had finally come to light, and thunder rolled across the mountains like distant drums of war. The USB drive felt impossibly small for something that contained so much devastation. Jack turned it over in his hands, while Victoria's tech team worked at their computers, extracting and decoding Sarah's recovered files. "Your wife was brilliant," Marcus, the head of cybersecurity, said without looking up from his screen. "She didn't just find the money trails, she mapped the entire network, shell companies, fake charities, everything." Victoria paced behind them, her heels clicking a sharp rhythm on the floor of the secure room. "How much time until the board meeting?" 48 hours, Jack answered. He'd memorized every detail of their plan, every potential point of failure. "Wallace has already started moving against us." The rumors about your unusual management decisions are spreading through the company. Victoria's phone buzzed. Her face tightened as she read the message. He's calling in his markers. 3 board members have suddenly developed concerns about the direction of the company. And the SEC? Jack asked. My contact there is ready to move, but we need something concrete. Something Wallace can't wiggle out of this time. She stopped pacing, watching lines of code scroll across Marcus's screen. Sarah found it once. We have to find it again. A soft beep from Jack's phone made him tense. The security alert showed someone accessing the east wing of the lodge, where the kids were supposed to be in their tutoring session. Victoria. His voice brought her to his side immediately. They watched on the security feed as Richard Wallace strode down the hallway, heading directly for the study room. He wouldn't dare, Victoria breathed, but they were both already moving. Jack reached the study room first, entering just as Wallace was introducing himself to a very uncomfortable-looking tutor. Just wanted to surprise my son, Wallace was saying smoothly. I'm sure you understand. Family is so important. The only thing you need to understand, Jack said from the doorway, is that you're trespassing. Max looked up from his history book, his face confused. Dad, what are you doing here? Wallace's charm never slipped. I missed you, son. Thought we could spend some quality time together before the board meeting. Your mother's been keeping us apart, but nothing. Victoria arrived, slightly breathless. Ms. Parker, please. Take all 3 children to the secure lounge, now. The tutor, well-trained in emergency protocols, quickly gathered the kids. Max's protests mixed with Emma's sharp questions as they were ushered out. Tyler, ever observant, cast a worried look at his father before following. Once they were gone, Wallace's mask cracked. Quite the domestic scene you've created here, Victoria. The kids studying together, the rugged protector watching over them. Too bad it's all built on lies. The only liar here is you. Jack stepped closer. Sarah found the truth about you once. Now we're going to finish what she started. Something. Dark flickered in Wallace's eyes. Ah, yes, poor Sarah. Such a tragic accident. You know how dangerous these mountain roads can be? Jack's fist caught Wallace's jaw before he could think, sending the older man staggering back. Victoria's hand on his arm stopped him from following through. That's what you want, isn't it? She said to Wallace. To provoke us into a mistake. But it won't work. We have Sarah's files. Wallace touched his jaw, his smile turning ugly. Files can be corrupted, servers can crash, buildings can burn. He straightened his tie. The board meets in 2 days. A lot can happen in 2 days. Is that a threat? Jack's voice was deadly quiet. Of course not. Just an observation about how uncertain life can be. Wallace moved toward the door. Oh, and Victoria, check your email. The board's calling an emergency session. Tonight. His smile widened. Try to bring enough copies of your evidence for everyone. After he left, Victoria's phone buzzed again. She read the message and closed her eyes briefly. He's right. Emergency board meeting in 3 hours. But the files aren't fully decoded, Jack protested. Marcus needs more time. Time just ran out. Victoria's voice hardened with determination. Get the kids somewhere safe, away from the lodge. I'll face the board with what we have. No. Jack pulled out his phone. We do this together, remember? I'm calling in some help from my old life. People who know these mountains better than Wallace's corporate spies ever could. Victoria watched him dial. You trust them? With my children's lives. He met her eyes. The question is, do you trust me? Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. God help me, I do. The resignation letter lay untouched on Victoria's desk, its crisp white paper stark against the mahogany. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, emergency vehicles' lights painted the Montana night in alternating red and blue. The board has called for an immediate vote of no confidence, Janet reported, her usual composure shattered. Mr. Wallace's evidence about the misappropriated funds, the irregular hiring practices, the personal use of company resources, all lies. Victoria said quietly, watching the firefighters battle the blaze in the East Wing, where Marcus's cybersecurity team had been working on Sarah's files, where the electrical fire had started, destroying their evidence mere minutes before the emergency board meeting. Jack burst into the office, smelling of smoke. Marcus is alive, bad concussion, but he'll make it. The servers are destroyed, and the backup drives are missing. His eyes fell on the resignation letter. Victoria, don't you dare. What choice do I have? Her voice was hollow. Wallace won. He timed everything perfectly, the fire, the board meeting, the fake evidence. If I don't resign, he'll take control anyway and press charges against me, against both of us. But you'd lose everything. The company, the lodge. Jack stepped closer. Max! Victoria flinched. No, the custody agreement is ironclad. He can't he? Jack's voice was gentle. You've seen what he's capable of. The fire wasn't an accident. Marcus's accident wasn't random. Just like Sarah's wasn't. A commotion in the outer office interrupted them. Max pushed past Janet, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Mom, is it true? Dad's telling everyone you stole money from the company? That you're dangerous? Victoria reached for her son, but Max stepped back. Have you been lying to me? About everything? No, Max. Jack moved toward the boy. Your father's the one. Don't, Max's voice cracked. You're not my dad. You're just some guy my mom hired. Everyone's talking about it, how she paid you to pretend to care about me. The words hit Jack like physical blows. Behind Max, Emma and Tyler appeared in the doorway, their faces showing matching hurt and confusion. Dad! Emma's voice was small. What's going on? Victoria stood, her CEO mask cracking. Max, please, I can explain everything. Save it. Max's eyes filled with tears. Dad was right. You kept me prisoner here, kept me away from him. I hate you. He turned and ran from the office. Max, wait! Victoria started after him, but Jack caught her arm. The resignation letter, he said urgently. Wallace is waiting for it. That's why he turned Max against you, to force your hand. Let me... Oh, go, Jack, I have to fix this. Not like this. He turned her to face him. Think, Wallace has been one step ahead the whole time. How? Someone had to tell him about Sarah's files, about Marcus's progress, about the exact moment to strike. Understanding dawned in Victoria's eyes. She pressed the intercom. Janet, where did Max go? Static answered. Jack rushed to the outer office. Empty. Through the window they saw Janet hurrying across the parking lot toward a waiting car. Even from this distance, they could see Max in the back seat. She's been working for Wallace the whole time, Victoria whispered. My own assistant. Jack was already moving. My truck's out back. Wallace will head for his private airfield. It's the only way he can get Max out of the state without alerting authorities. Victoria grabbed her phone and keys. I'm coming. With you. No. Jack's voice was firm. Wallace still has board members in his pocket. If you leave now, he'll claim you're fleeing with embezzled funds. You have to stay and fight here. He's my son, and I promised to keep him safe. Jack met her eyes. Do you trust me? Victoria's hand found his, squeezing once. Bring him back. Keep Emma and Tyler here. Wallace might try to use them as leverage. He started toward the door, then turned back, pulled her close and kissed her, fierce, quick, full of things they hadn't yet said. I will bring him back. Then he was gone, running through the smoke-tinged halls. Behind him, he heard Victoria on the phone, her voice ringing with authority. This is CEO Blackwood. Initiate Security Protocol 7. No one leaves the building. And get me the FBI. Jack pushed through the exit into the cold Montana night. Somewhere ahead, Wallace was trying to take Max across state lines, an act that would void custody, agreements, and buy time for his lawyers to work. But Wallace was used to corporate hunting grounds. These were Jack's mountains, and he'd learned long ago that the most dangerous predator wasn't always the biggest or strongest. Sometimes it was the one with nothing left to lose. The burner phone screen cast a pale glow in the darkened truck cab as Jack checked the GPS coordinates Mike had sent. His old friend from the lumber mill had connections with local pilots, who reported Wallace's jet being prepped at a small, private airstrip near the Idaho border. "You're looking at 2 hours minimum by road," Mike's voice crackled through the phone speaker. "He'll be in the air by then." Not taking the road, Jack turned onto a familiar logging track, his truck's headlights cutting through the darkness. "How long until the storm hits?" "Hour, maybe less. Jack, you can't seriously be thinking of taking the mountain pass. Not at night, not with weather coming. Wallace doesn't know these trails. He'll stick to the highway." Jack's hands tightened on the wheel as the truck climbed higher. "I can cut the distance in half if I cross through Miller's Pass. That pass is dangerous in daylight with good weather. At night, in a storm, I taught Max how to survive in these mountains." Jack cut in. "I won't let Wallace use them to take him away." A text from Victoria lit up the phone. "FBI alerted. Wallace's jet can't legally take off. Be careful." Jack smiled grimly. Wallace wouldn't care about legal. That's why he had chosen this remote airstrip, minimal staff, all probably paid, to look the other way. The logging road narrowed as it climbed, becoming little more than a game trail. Jack's truck swayed as wheels found ruts and rocks in the darkness. The first fat drops of rain hit the windshield. Another text from Victoria. "Janet talking, Wallace has armed security with him." Of course he did. Jack reached across to the glove compartment, finding the small emergency kit he'd stashed there months ago. Inside was a satellite tracker, flashlight, and the kind of tools that could come in handy when dealing with vehicles or people who needed discouraging. Thunder rolled across the mountains as the storm closed in. Jack killed his headlights, navigating by memory and the faint moonlight filtering through racing clouds. The truck's frame groaned as he pushed it harder than he should, but every minute counted. His phone buzzed again. Emma this time. Tyler overheard the FBI. They said Uncle Mike reported Wallace's men bought climbing gear in town. Dad, be careful. Climbing gear. Jack's mind raced. There was only one reason Wallace's team would need that equipment. The old mining trail. It was a deadly route in good weather, but it led directly to the airstrip, cutting out miles of highway driving. Jack braked hard, the truck sliding slightly on the wet ground. He'd been wrong. Wallace wasn't taking the highway. He was taking the direct route, gambling that his professional climbing team could handle the terrain. The storm hit in earnest now, rain hammering the truck's roof. Jack grabbed his emergency pack and the phone. The mining trail intersection was a quarter-mile ahead on foot. He sent a quick text to Victoria. "Wallace taking mining trail, going on foot to intercept. Have FBI wait at airstrip." Her reply was immediate. "Jack, no. Too dangerous. Wait for backup." But he was already moving, using the lightning flashes to navigate the familiar terrain. The mining trail was treacherous, a narrow path along cliff edges, threading through the mountains like a deadly snake. One wrong step meant a fatal fall. 20 minutes of careful hiking brought him to an overlook. Lightning illuminated the valley below, and there, headlights moving along the mining trail. 3 vehicles. They had to be going slow, even with professional climbers guiding them. Jack checked his satellite tracker. The airstrip was 4 miles ahead as the crow flew. The mining trail wound for 6 miles to reach it if he cut across the ridge. His phone lit up. Victoria again. "Please be careful. I can't lose you too." Jack typed back, "You won't, but I promise to keep Max safe, and I keep my promises." Then he turned off the phone and started down the ridge. Rain plastered his clothes to his skin, and thunder shook the mountains around him. But Jack moved with certainty, reading the terrain by touch and instinct, the way he'd learned over decades in these mountains. Somewhere ahead, Wallace and his men were guiding their vehicles along the mining trail, professional gear or not. They were playing by city rules in mountain territory. Jack smiled in the darkness as he moved faster, surer, becoming part of the storm and the wild terrain. Wallace thought money could buy him mastery over these mountains, but Jack had learned long ago that the wilderness didn't care about bank accounts or corporate power. Out here, the only thing that mattered was who really knew how to survive. The hand-drawn map was soggy but still readable in the beam of Jack's flashlight. He'd sketched it months ago while teaching Max and Tyler about the mining trail's dangers. Now, crouched behind a boulder as Wallace's convoy crept through the storm below, those lessons might save Max's life. A lightning flash revealed the lead vehicle, a heavy-duty SUV crawling along the narrow trail. Two more followed, their headlights cutting through the rain. In the distance, thunder rolled. Across the valley, like artillery fire, Jack checked his map. A quarter-mile ahead, the trail crossed an old wooden bridge spanning a deep gorge. The bridge was sturdy enough for hikers, but vehicles would be another matter. They'd have to cross one at a time, making it the perfect choke point. Moving parallel to the convoy but higher up the ridge, Jack picked his way through the darkness. His boots found solid purchase, even on rain-slicked rock. This was his element, the wilderness knowledge earned through decades of mountain life. The lead SUV's brake lights flared red as they reached the bridge. Jack counted 4 men getting out, their climbing gear obvious even in the dark. Professional mountaineers hired to guide Wallace's escape. They moved with confidence, checking the bridge's structure with powerful flashlights. Through the SUV's window, Jack caught a glimpse of Max in the back seat, Wallace beside him. Even from this distance, the boy's posture screamed distress. One of the climbers gave a thumbs up. The lead SUV started across, wooden planks creaking under its weight. Jack moved. Staying low, he worked his way down to the far side of the bridge. The old mining trail had a maintenance alcove there. A small cave used to store repair materials. Inside, Jack found what he'd hoped for: rusted tools, rotting timber, and most importantly, the bridge's ancient manual winch system. The lead SUV was halfway across when Jack's flashlight beam hit the driver's window. The vehicle jerked to a stop. "Max!" Jack's voice carried over the storm. "Get down!" The boy's head snapped up, recognition and hope flashing across his face. Wallace grabbed for him, but Max was already diving to the floor. Jack swung the flashlight beam to the bridge cables. The hired climbers would understand what they were seeing: the worn metal, the strain of the vehicle's weight, the dangerous sway in the wind. "Back up," Jack called. "Slowly. This bridge was built for mules, not SUVs. "Harrison!" Wallace's voice was nearly lost in the wind. "You're interfering with a father's right to—" A sharp crack cut through the air as one of the bridge supportee cables snapped. The SUV tilted sickeningly. "Max!" Wallace's shout held real fear now. "Max, come here!" But Max stayed down, just as Jack had taught him during their survival lessons. "Smart boy. Listen carefully." Jack pitched his voice to carry to everyone. "The bridge won't hold the weight much longer. Wallace, you have 2 choices. Let Max come to me, or risk all our lives trying to force this." Another cable groaned. One of the professional climbers shouted something urgent to Wallace. "You can't take my son!" Wallace was coming unhinged, his corporate polish cracking. "I won't let you. He's not property," Jack's voice thundered back. "He's a child. A child you abandoned, then tried to steal when it suited your purposes. Now make your choice before this bridge makes it for you." The bridge shuddered as a 3rd cable started to give. Max's voice rang out, "Dad, please!" For a moment everyone froze. Then Max clarified, "Jack, help!" Wallace's enraged cry was drowned out by the storm as Max yanked his door handle and bolted. He ran sure-footed across the trembling bridge, all those wilderness lessons paying off as he navigated the wet wood. Jack met him halfway, gathering him close before retreating to solid ground. Behind them, the climbers were frantically trying to reverse the SUV. "I'm sorry," Max choked out against Jack's chest. "I'm sorry I said those things at the lodge. I didn't mean—" "I know, buddy." Jack kept one arm around Max while pulling out his satellite phone. "Your mom's worried sick. Let's let her know you're safe." "You won't get away with this." Wallace's voice held an edge of desperation now. "The board will hear about—" The rest of his threat was lost as a thunderous crack split the air. The bridge's final support cables surrendered to physics and strain. The SUV's back wheels were barely clear when the entire structure collapsed into the gorge. Max shuddered against Jack as the crash echoed through the mountains. Their wilderness. Training sessions had always emphasized respect for nature's power. Now he'd seen it firsthand. "Come on," Jack said gently. "Let's get you home. Your mom's got a lot to tell you about why all this happened." They turned away from the devastation, leaving Wallace and his men to contemplate their ruined escape. Route. The storm was beginning to clear, and somewhere ahead, Victoria was waiting. It was time for truth, time for healing, time for a different kind of survival lesson altogether. The recording device sat in the center of the lodge's great room like a black hole, drawing all eyes to it. Marcus, still sporting bandages from the accident, had recovered it from the wreckage of his office. The fire hadn't reached this particular backup, hidden in a place only Sarah would have thought to look. "Play it again," Wallace demanded. He stood flanked by 2 FBI agents, his expensive suit mud-stained from the long walk back from the failed bridge crossing. "That recording proves nothing." Victoria's finger hovered over the playback button. Max sat between her and Jack on the couch, Emma and Tyler close by. The boy needed to hear this, needed to understand. Sarah's voice filled the room. "Testing. Testing. This is Sarah Harrison, Chief Financial Analyst for Blackwood Industries. The date is September 15th, 2023. I'm recording this as insurance in case something happens." Jack closed his eyes, his wife's voice striking him like physical blows. Max reached for his hand. The recording continued. "I've uncovered evidence that Richard Wallace has been using his position to funnel money from human trafficking operations through a series of shell companies. The documentation is extensive. Mr. Wallace approached me today, offered me money to forget what I'd found. When I refused..." A pause then. "He threatened my family, my husband, my children. Said accidents can happen in small Montana towns. I'm giving copies of everything to Victoria Blackwood. If you're hearing this and something has happened to me, look in the place where it all started. Victoria will understand." Wallace's polished facade cracked. "This is absurd. You can't prove..." "The place where it all started," Victoria interrupted. "Your first company office, the one you lost in the merger, where you kept your original books." She smiled coldly. "The FBI found them this morning. Every transaction, every shell company, every dirty dollar, along with evidence of 2 other accidents involving people who discovered the truth," one of the FBI agents added. "You're done, Mr. Wallace." Wallace lunged for the door, but the agents were faster. As they led him away in handcuffs, he turned to Max. "Son, you can't believe these lies. I'm your father." Max stood, Jack's wilderness lessons evident in his straight spine and steady voice. "No, a father protects people. He doesn't hurt them. He doesn't kill them." His voice cracked slightly. "Jack taught me that." After Wallace was gone, Max turned to his mother. "Why didn't you tell me about what he really was?" Victoria pulled her son close. "I thought I was protecting you. I was wrong. Secrets, secrets. Only protect the people who deserve to be exposed." "Sarah knew," Jack said quietly. "She knew the truth might get her killed, but she couldn't live with staying quiet." He looked at Emma and Tyler. "Your mom was a hero, kids. She died trying to stop very bad people from hurting others." Emma wiped tears from her eyes. "Is that why you took this job? Because you knew about Mom?" "No." Jack reached for Victoria's hand. "I took it because a boy needed help in the wilderness. Everything else came after. The truth, the justice, He squeezed Victoria's fingers. "The love." Tyler perked up. "Does this mean we're going to be a real family now? All of us?" The adults exchanged glances. Years of pain and secrets and healing passing between them in an instant. "Well," Victoria said carefully, "that depends on a lot of things. What happened with Wallace means changes for the company, for our lives. We'd need to figure out..." "Oh my God, Mom," Max interrupted, rolling his eyes in perfect teenage fashion. "Just say yes. We all know you love Jack, and Jack loves you, and we're already basically family anyway." Emma nodded sagely. "Max is Right, you guys aren't exactly subtle. Yeah, Tyler chimed in. You look at each other like people in Emma's gross romance movies. Hey, Emma protested. They're not gross, they're mature. The kids' bickering broke the heavy tension in the room. Jack pulled Victoria closer, and she came willingly, fitting against him like she belonged there. They're not wrong, he murmured. About the love, or about us being unsubtle, she whispered back. Both. Max made gagging noises, but his smile was bright enough to light up the room. The recording device still sat on the table. Sarah's voice, preserved within, but it no longer felt like a black hole of pain. Instead, it was a reminder of courage, of justice, of how love could grow even in the darkest places. Outside, the storm had passed. Morning sun painted the mountains in shades of promise, the wilderness stretching endless and beautiful before them. Their world had changed, but the important things remained. Family, truth, the strength they'd found in each other. Victoria looked at their joined hands, then at their children, because they were all their children now, bound by something stronger than blood. So, she said with a smile that held both tears and joy, who's up for a family camping trip? The kids' cheers echoed through the lodge, drowning out the last ghosts of secrets and lies. They had a new trail to blaze now, together. And this time, they'd all know exactly where they were going. The new family photo held pride of place on the lodge's mantel, taken at sunrise on the mountain peak where everything had started. Jack and Victoria stood close together, their 4 children arranged around them, all wearing hiking gear and genuine smiles. Behind them, the Montana wilderness stretched endless and beautiful, the rising sun painting everything in shades of possibility. 2 months had passed since Wallace's arrest. The media storm had been intense: corruption, murder, human trafficking, a corporate intrigue. But Victoria had weathered it with the same strength she brought to everything. The board, faced with evidence of Wallace's crimes, had unanimously backed her leadership. "Mom!" Max's voice carried from outside. "Dad's teaching us how to set up the new tent wrong again." Victoria looked up from her laptop, where she'd been reviewing the latest charitable foundation proposals. Through the window, she could see Jack deliberately struggling with tent poles, while the kids offered increasingly exasperated advice. "I can hear you maligning my camping skills," Jack called back, fighting to hide his grin. It was their new favorite game, the wilderness expert pretending incompetence until the children's lessons proved successful. Emma stood with her hands on her hips, every inch her mother's daughter. "The support beam goes through the blue loop first, Dad. We've showed you this like 1,000,000 times." "Oh, right," Jack snapped his fingers. "The blue loop, of course." He winked at Victoria through the window. Tyler, already covered in dirt despite the early hour, demonstrated the proper technique. "Like this, see? Max, help me show him." The boys worked together seamlessly, their earlier awkwardness forgotten. The night after Wallace's arrest, they'd stayed up late talking, healing their own wounds, in the way only children could, through shared stories, understanding, and finally, friendship turned to brotherhood. Victoria stepped outside, breathing in the crisp mountain air. The morning dew still clung to the grass, and somewhere in the forest, birds called their greeting to the day. "Finally!" Max threw his hands up as the tent took shape. "We did it!" "My heroes," Jack said solemnly. "Whatever would I do without such excellent teachers?" Emma rolled her eyes. "You're not fooling anyone, you know. We figured out weeks ago that you pretend to mess up so we can fix it." "Weeks ago?" Tyler looked shocked. But he's so bad at it." "Acting?" Max stage whispered. "Mom says he's actually really good at it." "That's how he fooled all those corporate guys when he first started working here." Victoria slipped her arm around Jack's waist. "Speaking of corporate guys, the foundation paperwork is ready. Sarah's Foundation for Corporate Accountability. The first whistleblower protection grants go out next month." Jack pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. She would have loved that. Using Wallace's seized assets to protect people who speak up about corruption. Gross, they're being mushy again, Tyler announced. Race you to the creek. The kids took off running, their laughter echoing through the trees. Jack and Victoria watched them go, knowing the creek was within the security perimeter, that cameras and guards kept silent watch over their paradise. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, Victoria admitted. All of it. The family, the justice, the happiness. I spent so many years afraid, keeping secrets. Hey, Jack turned her to face him. It's real. We're real. And the only secret you have to keep now is what you got me for our wedding next month. Victoria smiled. Speaking of which, the kids have opinions about the ceremony. Strong ones. Apparently, a traditional church wedding simply won't do. Oh? Max suggested the mountain peak where you saved him. Emma thinks the lodge's great room, decorated with climbing gear and wildflowers. Tyler wants us to get married while actually climbing, which I'm fairly certain isn't legal. Jack laughed. And what does the CEO of Blackwood Industries want? Victoria looked at their children, silhouetted against the morning sun as they played by the creek. This, she said softly, just this. Our family, our mountains, our truth. From the creek came a splash and delighted shrieks. The kids had apparently decided swimming was more fun than staying dry. Their joy was infectious, healing, real. Race you to the creek? Jack's eyes twinkled. Victoria kicked off her shoes. You're on, wilderness man. They ran together toward their children, toward their future, leaving the shadows of the past behind. Around them, the Montana wilderness, stretched endless and free. A reminder that some things, like love, like family, like truth, were as solid as the mountains themselves. The small cabin deed was Victoria's wedding gift to Jack, though small was relative when you were CEO of Blackwood Industries. The rustic structure sat on a private ridge overlooking the valley, built to Jack's exact specifications, a perfect blend of wilderness living and modern comfort. It's your escape hatch, she'd explained, knowing how overwhelming corporate life could still be for him, for when you need to remember who you really are. Now, standing on that same ridge in his wedding suit, no tie, he'd won that battle. Jack watched the sunset paint the mountains in the same colors as the day he'd first heard a child scream in the wilderness. So much had changed since then, all of it leading to this moment. Dad! Tyler's voice carried up from the ceremony site below. Emma says you have to come down now. Something about proper timing and Mom getting anxious. Jack smiled. Emma had appointed herself wedding coordinator, bringing the same determination to the task that she brought to everything. The ceremony setup was a perfect reflection of their blended family. Elegant flowers and climbing gear, champagne in fine crystal and trail mix in camping mugs. The guests were an equally eclectic mix. Corporate board members in designer suits, mingled with Jack's old lumber mill colleagues. Marcus, fully recovered, had brought his entire cybersecurity team. Mike from the mill was there with his family, already teaching Tyler and Max the finer points of bird calls. As Jack made his way down to the ceremony space, he caught sight of something that made his heart catch, a small memorial table, beautifully arranged by Emma. Sarah's photo held the center spot, surrounded by wildflowers and a simple card that read, "For those who taught us that love and truth are worth fighting for." She'd be proud of this, you know. Emma appeared beside him, stunning in her maid-of-honor dress. Of us, of how everything turned out. Jack pulled his daughter close. When did you get so wise? Probably around the time I had to start raising you, she teased. Then more seriously, Victoria asked me something important about last names after the wedding. She said we could keep Harrison or take Blackwood or combine them. What do you think? Emma's eyes were bright. I think Mom would want us to be happy, really happy, not just surviving. And I think Harrison Blackwood has a pretty good ring to it. Before Jack could respond, music began to play. Not the traditional wedding march, but a gentle acoustic guitar version of the song Sarah used to sing to the kids at bedtime. Another of Emma's perfect touches. Max appeared, proudly escorting his mother down the aisle they'd created. between rows of wooden benches. Victoria was radiant in a simple white dress, her corporate armor replaced by pure joy. Tyler walked behind them, taking his role as ring-bearer with intense seriousness. The ceremony itself was short, honest, and uniquely theirs. They'd written their own vows, speaking of love and trust, of families found and chosen, of wilderness wisdom and corporate courage. When they exchanged rings, they used the traditional words, but added their own promise. In the boardroom and the wilderness, in truth and in love, as long as the mountains stand. After, as their guests celebrated under strings of twinkling lights, the new family of 6 slipped away to the cabin's deck. The sun had set, painting the sky in stars that seemed close enough to touch. "So," Max said, breaking out the trail. "Mix, when's our first official family camping trip?" "Tomorrow too soon," Jack suggested, earning laughs from everyone. "Maybe we wait until after the honeymoon," Victoria said dryly. "Unless you all want to join us in—" "No!" all 4 kids shouted in unison. Emma shuddered dramatically. 2 weeks of you guys being romantic in Italy. Hard pass. We'll survive. With Uncle Mike, Tyler assured them. He's teaching us advanced bird calls. And Aunt Janet promised to take us rock climbing, Max added, then quickly corrected himself. I mean, the new Janet, the non-evil one. They all laughed. The pasts, shadows unable to touch this moment of pure happiness. Below, their guests danced and celebrated, but up here it was just them. A family forged in crisis, strengthened by truth, bound together by choice and love. Victoria leaned into Jack's embrace, watching their children trade jokes and stories. "Think we can really pull this off? Corporate CEO, wilderness expert, 4 kids, 2 worlds?" "Well," Jack said thoughtfully, "I'd say we've faced worse. Bears, corrupt executives, near-death experiences. Evil assistants," Max added helpfully. "Scary boarding schools," Tyler contributed. "Dad's camping food," Emma finished with a grin. "Hey," Jack protested. "My camping food is excellent," Victoria kissed him softly. "Keep telling yourself that, wilderness man." Around them, the Montana night was alive with possibility. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, new chances to prove that love could bridge any divide. But for now, they had this, their family, their truth, their mountains, and really, that was all they needed. The handmade walking stick leaned against the cabin's porch railing, its surface carved with 4 sets of initials, and the date 1 year earlier. Emma had made it as an anniversary gift, working secretly with Max to perfect the woodworking techniques Jack had taught them. "Found them!" Tyler's voice carried across the morning air. He stood at the edge of the clearing, binoculars raised to his eyes. "They're coming up the east trail." Victoria emerged from the cabin, still somehow managing to look elegant in hiking. Gear. Right on schedule. Jack's wilderness lessons are really sticking. They watched as Max and Emma appeared from the tree line, leading a group of teenagers along the marked path. The Sarah Harrison Foundation had launched its first youth wilderness leadership program 6 months ago, combining outdoor survival skills with corporate ethics education. Today's group was learning navigation, with the Harrison Blackwood kids as assistant instructors. "Remember when we first came up here?" Tyler asked, lowering his binoculars. "When Max was lost and Dad fought the bear?" "Hard to forget," Victoria smiled, ruffling his hair. "That was the day everything changed." Jack appeared from around the cabin, carrying camping gear for the evening's lesson. The past year had softened some of his rough edges while sharpening others. He moved easily between the corporate world and the wilderness now, at home in both but never losing his essential nature. "The kids are natural teachers," he said, watching Emma demonstrate proper map reading to the group. "Must get that from their mother." Victoria leaned into him. "Which mother?" "Both of them." They stood together, watching their family in action. Max had grown tall and confident, every inch his mother's son, but with Jack's steady nature. Emma's quiet strength reminded everyone of Sarah, while Tyler had developed a peacemaker's soul that bridged all their differences. The Foundation kids gathered around as Emma explained the day's lesson. Navigation isn't just about finding your way through the wilderness, she was saying. It's about knowing your true north, understanding what matters most when everything else falls away. Like family, Max added, and telling the truth, even when it's hard. Victoria squeezed Jack's hand, remembering all the truths that had brought them here. Wallace would spend the rest of his life in prison. The foundation, funded by his seized assets, had already helped expose 3 major corporate corruption cases. Sarah's legacy lived on in ways she could never have imagined. "Mom! Dad!" Max waved them over. "We need your bear encounter story. For the lesson." "Which version?" Jack called back. "The heroic one or the true one?" "Both," Emma answered. "They should know that sometimes the most important survival skill is knowing when to ask for help." The Foundation kids settled in a circle as Jack and Victoria joined them. Tyler distributed trail mix in camping mugs, a Harrison Blackwood tradition now. The morning sun warmed the mountain air as Jack began the story they all knew by heart. "It started with a scream in the wilderness," he said, "and a choice between walking away or running toward danger." Victoria watched their children's faces as Jack told the tale. They'd each found their path in this blended life they'd created. Emma was already talking about corporate law, determined to protect whistleblowers like her mother. Max had discovered a passion for environmental conservation, combining his mother's business sense with Jack's love of the wilderness. Tyler dreamed of designing better safety gear for climbers and hikers. The handmade walking stick caught the sunlight. Its carved initials a reminder of how far they'd come. The Foundation kids leaned in, caught up in the story of a bear, a rescue, and 2 families becoming one. Above them, the Montana mountains stood eternal, unchanged by the dramas that played out beneath them. Some might call it a fairy tale ending, but they knew better. It wasn't an ending at all, just the beginning of a different kind of adventure, one where love and truth blazed the trail and family was the only map they needed.